"We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." Her voice cracked when she said it. The same voice that once whispered lullabies on sleepless nights. The same voice that called me darling when the world was cruel. But now it trembled with a lie. That house wasn't just wood and sand and sunlight. It was her heart. Every wall still smelled of the sea and her late husband's cologne. Every creaking step remembered laughter, love, and loss. She thought she was doing it for me. That selling it would give us a fresh start. A better life. A life where I wouldn't see her breaking a little more every time she looked at that empty porch. But what she didn't know was that I already knew everything. I knew about the forged papers. I knew about the calls with the real estate agent she thought I couldn't hear, and I knew why she did it, because she thought she'd failed me. So I let her think she had control. I let her believe she was walking away first. I packed my bags, smiled, and said, "Okay, Mom, tomorrow." But that night I drove to the beach. The house stood quiet against the storm, its lights flickering like old memories fighting to stay alive. I sat on the same porch where she used to braid my hair and tell me that love was forever. Forever. I took the documents she'd hidden and tore them, one by one, into the sea wind. I had already bought the house back in her name weeks ago, paid in full, transferred quietly, because she didn't need another escape. She needed something worth coming back to. So when she woke up the next morning and saw me by the window, holding 2 tickets, one for a trip to the beach, not away from it, she cried. She thought I was angry. She thought this was revenge. But it wasn't. It was a promise that I'd never let the world, or her own fear, take away what made her heart still beat. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about making them face what they ran from. And when she stood there, barefoot in the sand, the morning sun touching her face, she finally saw it. The house wasn't just hers anymore. It was ours. And this time we weren't leaving. She didn't see it coming. One moment we were laughing over breakfast, the sunlight spilling through the kitchen window, and the next I said the words that made her freeze. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." Her spoon clattered against the plate, and I watched as the color drained from her face. The beach house. It wasn't just a property, just a structure by the water. It was her sanctuary, her memory box, the place where every corner held a story. She thought she was telling me something practical, decisive, final, but I could feel the shock ripple through her, the subtle tremor in her hands, the way her lips parted and closed like she was trying to catch the right words before they floated away. I watched her eyes dart to the window, to the distant ocean, as if seeing it could somehow undo what I'd just said. I could almost hear the memories whispering in the walls, the sound of waves crashing while she read to me on rainy afternoons, the echo of laughter as we ran along the shoreline, the quiet, heavy nights when she'd sit alone on the porch, remembering someone we both missed. The house had been hers for decades, a gift she never thought she would lose, and suddenly, in one sentence, it felt like I had stripped it away. She didn't cry right away. That came later in small shudders that betrayed her calm facade. Her mouth tried to form a question, but no words came. And I let the silence stretch, because silence has a weight heavier than any scream. I wanted her to feel the full impact, the disbelief, the sudden vertigo of thinking something sacred could just vanish overnight. I wanted her to realize, even before she asked, that I held all the power in that moment. Her breath caught again, this time sharper, faster, as the truth of my words sank in. The announcement wasn't just a plan, it was a shockwave through her world, a tremor that shook her carefully balanced life. And as she stared at me, wide-eyed and pale, I felt the quiet satisfaction of control, just enough to let her wonder what else she didn't know. The beach house was more than wood, sand, and sunlight. It was a living memory, a vessel of every joy, sorrow, and secret that had shaped her life. Every creaking floorboard carried the laughter of summers long gone, and the faint salt-kissed air held echoes of evenings spent watching the sun melt into the horizon. To anyone else, it might have been just a property, but to her, it was a sanctuary, a place where the past and present coexisted in quiet harmony. Every room told a story. The kitchen with its chipped paint where she had baked countless cakes for birthdays and celebrations. The living room where she had cried silently when letters arrived that reminded her of love lost. And the porch where she had held me in her arms, whispering dreams of a future that felt safe and unshakable. She had walked those halls hundreds of times, but each visit felt new because the memories refused to settle. The house was a keeper of laughter, of whispered secrets, and of the kind of love that didn't need words. The garden bloomed with the flowers she had planted decades ago, stubbornly surviving winters and storms, much like her own resilience. Even the ocean breeze seemed to carry a familiarity that no other place could replicate, the soft hum of waves mingling with the echoes of our shared past. When I mentioned selling it, I saw her heart hesitate, like a bird trapped in a storm. She had invested not just money, but years, emotions, and a part of herself into that house. It wasn't about material value, it was about legacy, about holding on to fragments of life that could never be replaced. The house was a mirror of her soul, and the thought of letting it go made her falter, though she tried to mask it. I watched her, silent, knowing that she didn't yet understand the full weight of what she was about to lose. And yet, I also felt the quiet ache of admiration for how deeply she had loved a place that had loved her back. I already knew. Every secret she thought she had buried beneath polite smiles and whispered reassurances was laid bare before me, though she didn't suspect it. I had seen the emails, the signed papers, the hushed phone calls with the real estate agent, all meticulously planned so she could frame it as a thoughtful, selfless decision. She believed she had outsmarted me, that she was acting for my benefit, that selling the house would be the key to a better future, one free from attachments, free from ghosts of the past. But I had watched quietly, absorbing every detail, noting every hesitation in her voice, every lingering glance toward the ocean, every subtle tremor in her hands when she thought no one was watching. What she didn't realize was that knowledge isn't just power, it's a lens. It lets you see motives, the cracks behind carefully constructed facades, the fragile threads that hold someone's world together. I knew why she had made the choice, and I knew that beneath her calm, practical explanation lay fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being trapped in memories too heavy to carry. She thought she was acting in my best interest, but in reality, she was trying to free herself from guilt, from the weight of the house, from the echoes of a life she could no longer fully embrace. I let her believe she had the upper hand. I let her think she was in control, that she could surprise me, that her plan would go unnoticed. Every word she spoke, every smile she forced, every nod of approval she expected in return, I recorded silently in my mind. I could have confronted her, revealed the truth immediately, shattered her illusion in an instant, but I didn't. Patience, I realized, was a more potent tool than confrontation. By letting her operate under the belief that she was unseen, I positioned myself not just as a witness, but as someone who held the next move. And in that quiet knowledge, I felt the beginnings of what would soon become more than awareness. It would become the subtle, unspoken mastery of the moment. I played my part perfectly, letting her believe that she had me fooled. I smiled at her words, nodded as she detailed her plan, even offered small, distracted comments that made her think I hadn't grasped the full scope of what she was doing. Every gesture, every laugh, every casual remark was carefully measured to maintain the illusion. She moved with confidence, assuming that I was oblivious, that I would leave everything in her hands without question. And yet, beneath that composed exterior, I was alert, absorbing every detail, weighing every choice, silently planning the path that would soon overturn everything she thought she controlled. It was almost theatrical, the way she paraded her decision, believing she had orchestrated the perfect surprise. She spoke of starting fresh and moving forward, her eyes glimmering with anticipation, and I let her speak, because each word reinforced the narrative she wanted me to accept. I laughed at the jokes she made, pretended to be distracted by trivial things, and allowed the moments to stretch as if I were only half listening. The truth, however, was that I was cataloging every movement, every nuance of her voice, every hesitation that betrayed her anxiety. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle that only I could see in its entirety. By pretending to go along, I gained something she could never: reclaim control over the narrative. She believed she was the one guiding the outcome, making the decisions, shaping the future. But in reality, I was already several steps ahead. My patience became a shield, masking my awareness, my understanding, and my quiet power. Each night, I replayed her words, her smiles, her confidence, knowing that the more she believed she had the upper hand, the more satisfying the revelation would be when the truth emerged. I allowed her to act first, to believe she was leading, because revenge, like art, required timing, precision, and the subtlety of a hand hidden just out of view. And in that quiet, careful performance, I was already winning, without her ever suspecting a thing. When she finally saw me standing by the window, barefoot and smiling, she froze. The tickets in my hand weren't a farewell. They weren't a departure from the life she had tried to abandon. They were an invitation, a return to everything she thought she had lost. For a moment, I watched her struggle to process it, the same hesitation I had seen in her years ago when she faced choices that seemed impossible. Her eyes, wide and glistening, searched mine for anger, for disappointment, for the weight of punishment, but found none. Instead, they found the quiet, steady proof that the house, the memories, the past she had feared losing, were safe. I could see it in her trembling hands, the way she clutched the edge of the window frame, as though holding on to the moment itself. She had expected confrontation, perhaps a lecture, maybe even a subtle retribution. But instead, I offered her understanding wrapped in action. I offered her the chance to step back into her sanctuary without fear, to reclaim what was hers without struggle or loss. It wasn't revenge in the way she imagined. With anger or resentment, it was a revelation, a truth laid bare, that some bonds are stronger than fear, that some legacies cannot be erased, and that love sometimes shows itself most powerfully through protection, not punishment. As she followed me to the car, the morning sun hitting her face just right, I saw relief wash over her, mingled with disbelief. She had prepared for departure, for endings, but instead she found a beginning. And in that moment, I realized that the most profound victories are not about making someone pay, but about showing them what they have been blind to all along. The house still stood, the waves still whispered, and the memories were intact, and when she finally smiled, truly smiled, I knew that the story had changed, not into one of loss, but into one of enduring connection, of promises kept, and of hearts restored.